The mining colony on Prime was dying, not from disease or lack of supplies, but from fear. Pure, simple fear of the thing that lived in the eastern hills. Commander stood at the observation window of the main building. She was tall and thin, with hard shell-like skin that clicked when she moved. Her species, were known for their calm thinking and careful planning, but even she felt the cold touch of fear when she looked toward the eastern quadrant. The beast had killed 17 workers in 6 months, 17 souls from 5 different species, all of them trained, all of them armed, all of them dead. The creature had no official name. The workers called it many things: the shadow, the demon, death itself. The science team had given it a proper classification, Alpha, but names did not matter. What mattered was that it was there and they could not stop it. Had seen the footage many times. The creature stood 12 feet tall at the shoulder. It walked on 6 powerful legs, each one ending in claws that could tear through metal like paper. Its body was covered in scales as black as the void between stars. When it opened its mouth, rows of teeth gleamed like broken glass, and its eyes burned red like dying suns. But the worst part was the sound. That had a roar that could shake buildings. It was not just loud. It was wrong. It reached inside your chest and grabbed your heart. Even the bravest soldiers had run from that sound. 3 military teams had tried to deal with the creature. The first had used stun weapons. The had walked through them like they were nothing. The second had brought heavy armor and plasma cannons. The creature had torn the vehicles apart and killed 6 soldiers in under 3 minutes. The third team had tried to trap it. They were still finding pieces of them in the rocks. Now the eastern quadrant was closed. Forever. The minerals there were worth more than most planets. Enough rare elements to build 1,000 starships. All of it sitting in the ground, unreachable because of one angry beast. Turned away from the window, there was nothing to be done. Some battles could not be won. The human ship arrived on a Tuesday. It was a small vessel called the Wanderer, old but well-maintained. It carried 5 humans who had been hired to fix the colony's failing air filtration systems. Simple work, boring work, the kind of work that did not involve monsters. Park was the first to step off the ship. He was 34 years old, average height, with a friendly face and calm eyes. He worked as an environmental systems specialist, which was a fancy way of saying he fixed things that other people could not figure out. He had a gift for seeing problems differently than others. Behind him came the rest of the crew, was the captain. She was small but fierce, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Minyu was their security officer, a big man with big arms and a surprisingly gentle voice. Was the always curious, always asking questions, and was the youngest, a communications technician on his first real mission. He tried to look brave, but his hands shook a little as he looked around at the alien world. An officer named met them at the dock. He was nervous. All the aliens here seemed nervous. "Welcome to Prime," said. His voice was thin and worried. "Please follow all safety rules. Do not go to the eastern quadrant. Do not ask about the eastern quadrant. Do not even think about the eastern quadrant." Raised an eyebrow. "What's in the eastern quadrant?" Shellskin went pale. "Death," he whispered. "Death is in the eastern quadrant." That night the humans attended a general meeting in the colony's main hall. Workers from a dozen different species sat together, and Commander explained the situation. She showed footage of She showed the death count. She showed the destroyed vehicles and the abandoned mining equipment worth millions of credits. "The eastern quadrant is permanently off-limits," announced. "Anyone who enters will be terminated from their contract. This is for your own safety." Most of the room nodded. They understood. They were afraid. But was not nodding. He was leaning forward, studying the footage with strange intensity. His noticed. "What are you looking at?" whispered. "Watch its ears," said quietly. "See how they flatten before it attacks, and look at its posture. the way it always positions itself between the intruders and that rock formation behind it. Looked closer. She studied alien creatures for a living, but she had been so focused on the violence that she had missed what was seeing. It's protecting something, she realized. More than that, said. Look at the warning displays, the roaring, the posturing, the slow approach before it attacks. It gives them every chance to leave. It doesn't want to fight, it's not hunting. He sat back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. That thing isn't a monster, he said. It's a scared animal, a very big, very dangerous, very scared animal. Heard him and frowned. Don't even think about it, she warned. We're here to fix air filters, that's all. Smiled but said nothing. After the meeting, the humans returned to their quarters. They were small rooms, simple but clean. Sat on his bed and stared at the ceiling. He could not stop thinking about its red eyes and its terrible roar, about the way it moved, always defensive, always afraid. He thought about his grandmother's farm back on Earth. She had kept animals all her life. Chickens, goats, a few pigs, and one old barn cat that hissed at every person who came near. Everyone said that cat was mean, dangerous, untouchable. But's grandmother had just laughed. That cat isn't mean, she had said. It's scared. Someone hurt it once and now it thinks everyone will hurt it. All it needs is someone patient enough to show it that not everyone is cruel. She had been right. By the end of that summer, the old barn cat slept in its lap every night, purring like a small engine. Smiled at the memory. Then he got up, walked to his small window, and looked out. The days passed slowly on Prime. The human crew worked on the air filtration systems as they had been hired to do. It was hard work but simple work. Enjoyed it. There was something peaceful about fixing things, about taking something broken and making it whole again. But his mind kept wandering to the eastern quadrant, to the creature that waited there in the rocks and shadows. He could not stop thinking about it. She always noticed things. That was her job she studied life, and right now she was studying. You're going to do something stupid, she said one evening. They were sitting in the small cafeteria, eating dinner with the rest of the crew. I can see it in your eyes. Shrugged, I'm just curious. Curious is how people die on alien planets, Minyu said. The big security officer pointed his fork at. I've seen the footage. That thing is not something you can be curious about. What do you know about it? Asked. Really know, I mean, not what everyone says. What does the data tell us? Sighed, she had been asking herself the same question. Not much. That was first seen about 6 months ago, right after the colony expanded into the eastern quadrant. Before that, no one even knew it existed. So it was living there before the colony arrived, said. Probably. The eastern quadrant has a network of caves and canyons, good shelter, good hunting grounds for native prey animals. Paused. We built our mining operation right on top of its home. Looked up from her food. Are you saying this is the colony's fault? I'm saying the creature was there first. We invaded its territory, destroyed its hunting grounds, drove it into a corner, spread our hands. What did everyone expect it to do? Welcome us with open arms. The table fell silent. The youngest of them looked uncomfortable. But it killed people, he said quietly. 17 people. Yes, agreed. And that's terrible, but think about it from the creature's view. Strange beings arrive. They make loud noises. They bring machines that shake the ground. They point weapons at you. What would you do? Fight back, Minyu admitted. I would fight back. Nodded slowly. Every time someone has approached that creature, they've come with weapons, with vehicles, with large groups, everything that would make a territorial animal feel threatened. He looked around the table. Has anyone ever tried just walking up to it alone, unarmed, quietly? The others stared at him. That would be suicide, said flatly. Maybe, said, or maybe not. Over the next few days, spent his free time gathering information. He talked to the workers who had survived encounters with the. He read every report, watched every piece of footage, studied every detail he could find. He learned that the creature always stayed in the same area. It never wandered far from a particular rock formation deep in the eastern quadrant. It attacked anyone who came near that formation, but it did not chase them far. Once the intruders retreated, the returned to its spot and waited. "It's not hunting," told one night. "If it wanted to hunt, it would range across the whole quadrant. It would follow prey. It would be unpredictable, but it's not. It stays in one place. It defends one area." "You think it's guarding something," said. "I know it is. Look at the patterns. Every attack happens within 500 meters of that rock formation. The creature never leaves that radius. Something important is there. A nest, maybe. A mate. Young." His eyes widened. "If there are young in that area, then every attack has been a parent defending its children." His voice was soft. "We're not the victims here. We're the threat." The information changed everything for. He no longer saw a monster. He saw a creature doing what any creature would do, protecting its family, fighting for survival, screaming at the world to stay away because it had no other choice. He knew what he had to do. That night went to Captain's quarters. She was reading reports on her when he knocked. "I want to go to the eastern quadrant," he said. Did not look surprised. "No. Just hear me out." "No." She set down and looked at him directly. "We are here to fix air filters. That's our job. That's what we're being paid for. Getting eaten by alien monsters is not in our contract." "The contract depends on the colony's success," said. "If the eastern quadrant stays closed, the colony fails. If the colony fails, we don't get paid. No payment means no fuel, no supplies, no way home." Was quiet for a moment. She had not thought about it that way. "What exactly do you want to do?" she asked finally. "I want to approach the alone. No weapons, no equipment, no backup, just me." "And then what? Ask it nicely to leave." Smiled. "No. I want to show it that not all intruders are threats. I want to build trust, the way humans have always built trust with dangerous animals." He told her about Earth's history, about wolves that became dogs, about wild horses that became partners, about all the dangerous creatures that humans had learned to live with, not through force, but through patience, through understanding, through the simple act of sitting still and proving that they meant no harm. Listened. She wanted to say no. Every sensible part of her brain screamed that this was madness. But another part, the part that had watched humans do impossible things her whole life, wondered if maybe was right. "Commander will never allow it," she said. "Then I won't ask for permission." Sighed deeply. "If you die, I'm putting 'died of stupidity' on your memorial." Grinned. "Fair enough." That night when the colony was quiet and the twin moons of Prime hung low in the sky, slipped out of the main compound. He carried only a small pack with water, some food, and a thermal blanket. No weapons, no lights, nothing that could be seen as threatening. He walked toward the eastern hills, toward the place where death waited. His heart beat fast, but his steps were steady. He was not afraid, or perhaps he was afraid, but he went anyway. That was what being brave meant, after all. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Behind him, the colony lights faded into the distance. Ahead, the darkness waited. The eastern quadrant was silent. Not peaceful silent, but the kind of silent that comes before a storm. The kind of silent that makes you hold your breath without knowing why. Walked slowly through the rocky landscape. The twin moons gave just enough light to see by. Strange rock formations rose around him like the bones of ancient giants. The air was cold and thin, and his breath came out in small white clouds. He followed the claw marks. They were everywhere once you knew to look for them. Deep grooves cut into the stone, marking territory, warning intruders. Each mark was bigger than his hand. Each mark reminded him of just how large the creature was. After an hour of walking, he found the canyon. It was not large, maybe 50 meters across, with walls that rose up on three sides. A natural shelter, a perfect place for a nest. And there, at the far end, curled around a pile of rocks and dried plants, was the... His heart stopped. The creature was bigger than the footage had shown. Much bigger. Its black scales seemed to absorb the moonlight, making it look like a hole in the world. Its 6 legs were tucked under its body, but even relaxed, they looked powerful enough to crush stone. And its eyes, those burning red eyes, were open and staring directly at him. For a long moment, nothing happened. The world held its breath. Then the raised its head. A low sound began to build in its chest, not quite a growl, more like the rumble of distant thunder. It grew louder and deeper, climbing up through the creature's throat until it burst out in that terrible roar. The sound hit like a physical force. It rattled his teeth. It shook his bones. It filled his head with the pure, primal command to run. He did not run. Instead sat down. The roar stopped. They stared at him with what could only be described as confusion. This was wrong. This was not how the pattern worked. Intruders were supposed to run, or fight. They were not supposed to sit on the cold ground and look back calmly. Crossed his legs and placed his hands on his knees. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but he stayed still. He kept his breathing slow and steady. He made himself as small and non-threatening as possible. "Hello," he said softly. His voice sounded strange in the silence. "I'm not here to hurt you." They did not understand the words. Of course it did not. But it understood the tone. Soft, gentle, not the sharp commands that soldiers shouted before attacking, not the mechanical noises of vehicles and weapons, just a quiet voice in the darkness. The creature rose slowly to its feet. It was even more massive standing up, had to tilt his head back to see its face. Those red eyes studied him, searching for danger, searching for the trap that must surely be coming. But there was no trap. There was only a small human sitting alone in the moonlight. They took a step forward. The ground shook slightly under its weight, did not move. Another step, closer now. Close enough that could smell the creature, a strange scent like burnt metal in old forests. Still, he did not move. The creature lowered its head until it was almost level with his face. Its breath was hot against his skin. Its teeth, those rows of terrible teeth, were close enough to touch. One bite and would be gone. One swipe of those claws and he would be nothing but a memory. "I know you're scared," said quietly. "I know we destroyed your home, I know we hurt you, and I'm sorry, we didn't understand, but I understand now." They made a low sound in its throat, not a growl this time, something else, something almost questioning. Continued talking. He talked about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests of his home world. He talked about dogs and how they had once been wolves. He talked about his grandmother and the old barn cat that had hissed at everyone until it learned to trust. He talked about patience and kindness, and the strange human habit of wanting to befriend things that could kill them. The words did not matter, they could not understand them, but the voice mattered. The calm, steady presence mattered. The simple fact that this strange, small creature was not running, not fighting, not threatening, that mattered more than anything. Hours passed. The moons moved slowly across the sky. The cold deepened and wrapped his thermal blanket around his shoulders. Still, he did not leave. Still, he talked in that soft, gentle voice. Eventually, the pulled back. It returned to its spot at the far end of the canyon and curled up again. But it did not take its eyes off. It watched him with something that was no longer fear or anger. It was curiosity, interest, the first tiny seed of trust. As the sky began to lighten with the approach of dawn, slowly stood up. Every muscle in his body ached from sitting so long in the cold. He stretched carefully, moving slowly so as not to startle the creature. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said. "Same time, same place, and I won't bring weapons or machines or anyone else, just me, I promise." The watched him go but did not follow, did not attack, did not roar. Walked back to the colony as the first light of morning touched the peaks of the eastern hills. He was exhausted, frozen, and his legs shook with every step. But he was alive. More than that, he was hopeful. He returned the next night, and the next, and the next. Each night he sat a little closer. Each night there was a little calmer. By the third night it stopped raising its head when he arrived. By the fifth night it no longer growled at all. By the seventh night the creature stood up when it saw him coming and walked toward him without fear. They sat together in the darkness, the human and the monster, as the twin moons traced their slow path across the sky, talked and listened, and somewhere in those long, cold nights something changed. Not friendship, not yet, but the beginning of it, the foundation, the first fragile thread connecting two very different creatures who had somehow found something familiar in each other. On the eighth night, reached out his hand slowly, so slowly, and touched the side of this massive head. The creature went still, its red eyes locked onto his. For a moment was certain he had made a terrible mistake. Then the leaned into his touch and closed its eyes. And somewhere deep in its chest, it began to purr. Somewhere in that darkness, a creature watched him come, and for the first time in 6 months it did not roar. It was Curiosity, the eastern hills. Somewhere out there, a creature was waiting, a creature that everyone feared, a creature that everyone wanted to kill or avoid, a creature that just needed someone patient enough to sit down and stay. The colony found out on the 9th day. Someone had noticed leaving at night. Someone had followed at a safe distance with a camera drone, and now the footage was everywhere. It showed sitting beside the creature that had killed 17 people, with his hand resting gently on its massive head. The beast's eyes were closed. It looked almost peaceful. Commander called an emergency meeting. The main hall was packed. Every species in the colony was there, talking in worried voices, pointing at screens showing the impossible footage. When entered with his, the room went silent. Every eye turned to him. Some looked at him with fear, some with anger, a few with something that might have been hope. "Explain yourself," Commander said. Her voice was cold and hard. "You violated direct orders. You entered a restricted zone. You could have been killed." "But I wasn't," said calmly. "That is not the point," stepped forward, her shell skin clicking with agitation. "You put the entire colony at risk. If that creature had followed you back here, if it had seen this place as connected to you, it could have attacked us all." "It won't attack," said. "Not anymore. It's not our enemy. It never was." The room erupted in angry voices. Workers shouted about their dead colleagues. Security officers demanded its arrest. Scientists argued about protocols and proper procedures. The noise grew and grew until raised her hand for silence. "You have one chance to explain," she said. "Make it good." Looked around the room at all the frightened, angry faces. Then he began to speak. He told them about how it had been living in the eastern quadrant long before the colony arrived, about how the mining operation had destroyed its home, its hunting grounds, its entire world, about how every attack had been an act of defense, not aggression, a parent protecting its young from invaders it could not understand. "We came into its territory with machines and weapons," said. "We made loud noises. We threatened everything it cared about. And when it fought back, we called it a monster, but we were the monsters to it. We were the ones destroying its home." The room was quiet now. Some faces had softened. Others remained hard and skeptical. "So what?" someone called out. "It still killed people. Understanding why doesn't bring them back." "No," agreed. "It doesn't, and I'm truly sorry for everyone who died, but we can't change the past. We can only change the future, and right now we have a choice. We can keep fighting this creature until it kills us all, or we kill it, or we can try something different. We can try to live together." Made a sound of disbelief. Live together with that thing. Stepped forward then. She had been quiet until now, but could see she was ready. She had spent the last week researching, preparing, waiting for this moment. "Commander, if I may," she said, "I'd like to explain why what did actually worked." Gestured for her to continue. Activated her and projected images onto the main screen. Pictures from Earth. Wolves walking beside humans. Horses carrying riders into battle. Elephants working in fields. Lions resting beside people. Cats curled up in laps. Dogs sleeping at the feet of children. Humans evolved as apex predators began. But unlike most intelligent species, we did not evolve alone. We formed bonds with other creatures. Symbiotic relationships, partnerships. We domesticated wolves over 30,000 years ago. We tamed horses. We befriended creatures that could kill us with a single blow. She switched to a chart showing different species in the Galactic Union. Most sentient species evolved as prey animals or as solitary hunters. Their instincts tell them to run from danger or to kill it, fight or flight. Those are the only options their biology gives them. She pointed to a small dot labeled humans on the chart. But humans have a third option. We look at dangerous creatures and we think, I wonder if I can make friends with it. It's not just intelligence. It's instinct. A deep, evolutionary drive to form bonds with other species. The room was listening intently now, even looked interested despite herself. What did was not crazy, continued. It was deeply, fundamentally human. He saw a frightened animal and he wanted to help it. He saw a threat and he wanted to turn it into an ally. That's what our species does. That's what makes us different. She paused and looked around the room. No other species in the Galactic Union has this trait. You see thee and you see death. Saw thee and saw a potential friend. And because of that, because of his patience and his courage and his strange human instinct to pet things that could eat him, we now have a chance at peace. The room fell into thoughtful silence. Finally spoke. Even if everything you say is true, how do we know this creature won't attack again? How do we know it truly trusts us? As if in answer, a commotion arose outside. Shouts of alarm, screams of fear. The ground shook with heavy footsteps. Everyone rushed to the windows. There, at the edge of the colony, stood the... It had left its canyon for the first time in months. Its massive body blocked the light of the rising sun. Its red eyes swept across the buildings and the terrified workers scrambling for cover. Then it saw. The creature made a sound, not a roar, something softer, almost like a greeting. It walked forward slowly, carefully, stepping around vehicles and equipment with surprising grace. Workers fled from its path, but it ignored them completely. Its attention was fixed on one person only. Walked out to meet it, tried to grab his arm, but he gently pulled free. "Trust me," he said. The lowered its massive head until it was level with its chest. He reached up and scratched behind one of its armored ears. The creature closed its eyes and made that low, rumbling sound again. It was purring. The colony watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous creature on Prime stood peacefully beside the small human, its eyes closed in contentment, its terrible claws still against the ground. Turned back to face the crowd. "It followed me home," he said with a small smile. "I think it wants to be friends." Behind him, he opened one red eye and looked at the gathered aliens. For the first time, there was no fear in its gaze, no anger, just calm curiosity. And somewhere deep in its chest, it continued to purr. 3 months changed everything. The eastern quadrant was open again. Miners returned to their work, pulling precious minerals from the ground while they watched from its favorite resting spot on a nearby ridge. The creature had become a familiar sight now. Workers waved to it as they passed. Some even brought it food, leaving offerings of meat at a respectful distance. Had named it an old Korean word from Earth. The name meant spider, a joke about its many legs. The creature did not know its name, of course, but it knew his voice. It knew his scent. And whenever he called, it came. The colony had built a special area for near the eastern ridge. Not a cage, never a cage, just a comfortable space with shelter from the harsh weather and a clear view of the canyon where its nest still waited. Sometimes stayed there, sometimes it wandered the quadrant, sometimes it followed around the colony like a shadow the size of a building. The other species were slowly getting used to it. Fear turned to caution. Caution turned to curiosity. And curiosity, in time, turned to something almost like affection. The creature that had once been called death itself now had a dozen nicknames, most of them surprisingly gentle. Minyu had been the second human to touch. It happened by accident. He had been looking for one evening and walked too close to where the creature was resting. When turned to look at him, Minyu had frozen in place, his heart pounding, certain he was about to die. But had only sniffed him once, recognized scent on his clothes, and turned away with a sound like a dismissive grunt. "It knows your pack," explained later. "You're part of my family, so you're part of its family. That's how it thinks." Minyu had laughed nervously. "I never thought a giant murder creature would consider me family." "Humans have strange families," said with a smile. "We always have." By the second month, allowed all 5 humans to approach it. Still kept her distance, preferring to watch from afar, but even she had to admit there was something beautiful about the way the creature moved. Spent hours observing its behavior, taking notes, building the first real scientific understanding of the species. Who had been terrified at first, now helped bring food to each evening. The young man had gone from shaking with fear to smiling with wonder. The news spread across the Galactic Union. A human had tamed the untamable. A creature of nightmare had become a creature of peace. Other colonies began sending messages, asking questions, requesting help. It turned out that Prime was not the only place with a problem creature. The Galactic Union was full of dangerous animals, beings too powerful to fight, too valuable to kill, too wild to live alongside. Every colony had its own version of every world had its own monster. And now they all wanted humans to help. Commander called a meeting to discuss the requests. The main hall was full again, but the mood was different now. There was no fear, no anger, just excitement and possibility. "We have received 73 formal requests for human assistance," announced. "Colonies across 12 systems are dealing with dangerous fauna they cannot manage. They have seen what happened here, and they want the same results." She turned to, "Your crew's contract was for environmental systems maintenance, but we would like to propose a new contract, a more important one." Raised an eyebrow. "What kind of contract?" "Training," said. "We want you to teach others what did. We want to understand this human ability to bond with dangerous creatures, and we want to share that understanding across the Union." Spoke up. "I've been developing a training program. I call it companion bonding. It's based on human techniques for domesticating animals adapted for other species. I think it could work." Looked at her crew, was nodding enthusiastically. Minyu shrugged as if to say why not. Eyes were bright with excitement. Even, usually so careful and cautious, was smiling. "Well," said, "I guess we're in the monster taming business now." The colony celebrated that night. Workers from a dozen species gathered in the main hall, sharing food and stories and laughter. Somewhere outside, sat on its ridge, watching the lights with calm red eyes. Slipped away from the celebration to visit the creature. He climbed the ridge and sat down beside its massive head, turned to look at him, made that low purring sound, and rested its chin on the ground near his lap. "They're calling us the mad ones now," said, scratching behind's ear. "The species that looks at monsters and sees friends. I suppose they're not wrong." Rumbled contentedly. Found him there an hour later. She climbed the ridge and stood beside him, looking out over the colony. "You changed everything," she said. "You know that, right?" Shook his head. "I just sat down, that's all. I just sat down and stayed." "That's more than anyone else did." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Below them, the colony lights sparkled like stars fallen to Earth. Above them, the twin moons rose slowly into the dark sky. "What do you think will happen now?" asked. Smiled. "I think humans will keep doing what humans do, finding dangerous things, sitting down beside them, waiting patiently until the growling stops. It's what we've always done, since the very beginning." He looked down at who had fallen asleep with its head near his lap. The massive creature, the terror of Prime, looked almost peaceful now, almost gentle, almost like the barn cat from his grandmother's farm, curled up in the sun. "We're not the strongest species," said softly. "We're not the or the fastest, but we might be the bravest, or the most foolish. Maybe both. We see the universe full of things that could kill us, and our first thought is always the same. I wonder if it wants to be friends." Laughed quietly. "That is pretty foolish." "Yes," agreed, "but it works." He reached down and stroked its massive head one more time. The creature stirred slightly, opened one red eye to look at him, then closed it again with a contented sigh. And there, on a ridge overlooking a colony that had once been paralyzed by fear, the beast that had bellowed at all intruders purred in its sleep. It had finally found what it needed most. Not a cage, not a weapon, not an enemy. Just someone brave enough to sit down and stay. Stared for a long moment, then she shook her head slowly. "Humans," she said, her voice filled with wonder and disbelief, "you are all completely insane." Scratched his head again and grinned. "Maybe, but it works." "I wonder," whispered to himself, "if you like having your head scratched."